On my father-in-law's birthday, they called me a cook, so I left without looking back. Jessica Taylor was in the kitchen of the Anderson mansion, putting the final touches on the chocolate cake with gourmet brigadeiro she had prepared with so much love for her father-in-law's 70th birthday. She had spent the entire day mixing special ingredients, decorating with handmade sugar flowers, creating an edible work of art she knew would leave everyone impressed. That's when she heard the shrill voice of her sister-in-law, Jennifer, echoing from the dining room. "Guys, the cook is taking way too long with dessert. You know how it is. These people have no sense of time." The fake laughter of the guests cut through Jessica's heart like a sharp blade. She felt the blood rush to her face, her hands trembling slightly as she held the spatula. For a moment, she froze, processing what she had just heard. The cook. After 3 years of marriage to Michael, after all the parties she had organized, all the dinners she had prepared with care, she was still seen as the house help. Jessica took a deep breath, removed the lace apron her own mother had given her, and left it on the marble counter. She lifted the cake with both hands, feeling the weight of her dedication, and walked toward the room where more than 20 guests awaited dessert. The silence that fell when she entered carrying the cake was deafening. Every eye turned to her, from Michael's distant cousins to his father Richard's business friends. Jennifer, a 35-year-old woman with perfectly styled brown hair and a dress that cost more than Jessica's monthly salary, visibly paled. "The cake is served," Jessica said firmly, placing her creation at the center of the mahogany table. The golden candles shimmered against the dark chocolate, and even in that tense moment, she could see the glimmer of admiration in some guests' eyes. Without another word, Jessica walked to the coat rack near the entrance, grabbed her brown leather purse and the keys to her white Corolla. Michael, who had been chatting with uncles near the fireplace, finally noticed the commotion and came toward her. "Jess, where are you going? Dad hasn't cut the cake yet," he said, oblivious to the tension in the air. "Ask your sister," was all she managed to reply before opening the front door and stepping into the mansion's illuminated garden. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Michael ran after her, but Jessica had already unlocked the car and started the engine. Through the half-open window, she could hear fragments of confused chatter from the house, overlapping voices trying to understand what had happened. "Jessica, wait! What's gotten into you?" Michael tapped lightly on the window, but she had already shifted into reverse. "Go ask your dear sister," she said through the window, before accelerating down the long cobblestone driveway toward the main gate. In the rearview mirror, she watched Michael's figure shrink until it disappeared. The two-story mansion, with its white columns and immaculate gardens in the upscale Upper East Side of New York, became a distant memory as she drove away. Jessica navigated the familiar streets with no destination, tears blurring her vision. How had it come to this? How could a family she considered her own treat her that way? The questions pounded in her mind as she drove through the nighttime New York traffic. Instinctively, she headed to Amanda's apartment, her best friend since their days in accounting trade school. The simple three-story building in Queens stood in stark contrast to the opulence she had left behind, but it represented something the Anderson mansion had never offered: genuine warmth. Amanda opened the door still in her robe, her hair tied in a messy bun. Her brown eyes widened when she saw her friend's state. "Oh my God, Jess, what happened? Weren't you at your father-in-law's birthday party?" Jessica collapsed onto the small living room couch, recounting between sobs what had happened. Amanda listened quietly, preparing chamomile tea as she processed every word. "Jess, I need to tell you something," Amanda said after her friend had calmed down a bit. "This isn't the first time." "What do you mean?" Amanda sighed, settling into the armchair across from the couch. "Remember Jennifer's baby shower about 6 months ago? I was waiting for you in the parking lot when I overheard some of her friends talking. One of them said, 'Poor Jennifer, having to put up with that sister-in-law who doesn't even know how to behave in society.' And another replied, 'At least she cooks well, right? She's like a luxury maid.' The silence that followed was heavy. Jessica felt as if the ground had opened beneath her feet. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" because I thought you already knew somehow, and because, well, I hoped things would get better, that they'd see who you really are. Jessica spent the night at Amanda's apartment, ignoring the dozens of calls Michael made. She needed time to process not just what had happened that night, but apparently years of disrespect that had gone unnoticed, or that she had chosen to ignore. The next morning, Michael showed up at Amanda's door, his face drawn and dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing the same dress clothes from the day before, wrinkled and smelling of cigarettes. "Jessica, please, let's talk. What Jennifer did was terrible, but you can't just run away like this." "Run away?" Jessica stood up from the table where she was having coffee with Amanda. "I'm not running, Michael. I'm stepping away from people who treat me like I'm invisible. But you know I don't feel that way. My family might be complicated, but I love you." "Complicated?" Jessica's voice rose. "Michael, your sister called me a cook in front of all your friends, and you didn't even realize something was wrong until I left the house." Michael lowered his head, running his hands through his messy brown hair. "I know I should have noticed. I know I should have stood up for you more, but you know how dramatic Jennifer is. I always thought it was better to ignore it." "Ignore?" Jessica repeated the word like a bitter taste in her mouth. "Is that what you've been doing all this time? Ignoring it while your family humiliated me?" The conversation that followed was painful and revealing. Michael admitted he had always known about his family's hidden prejudice toward Jessica. He confessed he'd heard remarks about the class difference between them, but had chosen to turn a blind eye to avoid conflict. "I thought with time they'd learn to value you," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought if I didn't acknowledge the comments, they'd stop." But they didn't stop, Michael. And now I've found out everyone knew except me, or rather, I knew but pretended not to see. Jessica decided she needed more time to think. Michael went home with the promise that she would reach out when she was ready to talk again. Over the next few days, Jessica settled into Amanda's guest room and tried to process 3 years of marriage from a new perspective. How many times had she been treated like hired help without realizing it? How many subtle jokes had she swallowed to keep the peace? It was on Wednesday that the phone rang. It was Mrs. Barbara, Jessica's mother-in-law, a 68-year-old woman with impeccably styled grey hair and a posture that exuded authority. "Jessica, dear, we need to talk. This whole situation has been very upsetting for Richard. You know how fragile his heart is." Jessica agreed to meet her mother-in-law at a cafe in Williamsburg, neutral territory far from the Anderson mansion. Mrs. Barbara arrived punctually, wearing a beige knit set and carrying a designer bag that cost more than Jessica's car. "Dear, you know we consider you part of the family," Mrs. Barbara began, stirring the sugar into her coffee with precise movements. "But you also need to understand that Jennifer was stressed with all the party planning. Sometimes we say things we don't mean." Jessica watched the older woman, noticing how she avoided direct eye contact. "Mrs. Barbara, with all due respect, do you really think I don't notice when I'm treated differently?" "Differently how, dear?" "Like when all the other guests are introduced by their full names, but I'm always Michael's wife. Like when the other daughters-in-law are invited to the ladies' luncheons, but I never get an invitation. Like when—" "Jessica," Mrs. Barbara interrupted with a sigh that revealed more than she intended. "You must understand our family has always had certain standards. Michael was always such a bright boy, so promising. We always imagined he'd marry someone from the same social circle." The silence that followed was telling. Finally, the truth had been spoken plainly. "So you're saying I'll never be good enough for you," Jessica said with a calm that surprised even herself. "That's not it, dear. It's just, well, you have to admit you're very different. Michael has a college degree. The family has important businesses in the city. You're a sweet girl, but I'm just an accounting technician living in a rented apartment in Queens," Jessica finished. Mrs. Barbara didn't deny it. She just stirred her coffee again, as if the circular motions could soften the harshness of the unspoken words. Jessica stood up, leaving her cappuccino untouched. "Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Barbara. At least now I know where I stand." "Jessica, wait. It doesn't have to be like this. You can still be part of the family. You just need to adapt better to our expectations. And what are those expectations? Well, you could be more discreet at family gatherings. Let Jennifer and me handle the party planning. You're a wonderful cook. No one denies that. But maybe it's best to let others take the spotlight. Jessica felt a mix of anger and liberation. Finally, after 3 years, she was hearing what the family truly thought of her. And it hurt less than she'd imagined because at least now she had clarity. Mrs. Barbara, you're asking me to be invisible in my own family. I'm asking you to be realistic, dear. Jessica didn't respond. She just grabbed her purse and left the cafe, leaving Mrs. Barbara with the bill and her expectations. That night, Michael showed up at Amanda's apartment again, this time more agitated. My mother told me you two talked. Jess, you can't take everything she says so seriously. She's from another generation. She has old-fashioned ideas. Michael, your mother told me I should be more discreet, less of a presence in my own family. She basically asked me to accept being treated like hired help as long as I stay quiet and don't cause trouble. She exaggerated. You know how dramatic my mother can be. Dramatic? Jessica turned to face her husband. Michael, are you hearing what I'm saying? Your family wants me to be invisible, and you're asking me to accept this. It's exactly like that. Jessica's voice echoed through the small apartment. And the worst part is you agree with them. Otherwise you would have defended me a long time ago. Michael stayed silent for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and tired. Jess, I love you, but my family, it's complicated. They support my business, pay for our apartment, fund our life. I can't just pick a fight with them. So you're choosing their money. I'm choosing our future. Our children will go to the best schools, have opportunities neither of us ever had. It's worth putting up with a few nasty comments from Jennifer for that. Jessica looked at the man she had married, believing he would be the love of her life. Michael was 32, had a business degree from NYU, and had always been affectionate and attentive to her. But in that moment, she saw he had never truly fought for her. Michael, do you really think I'd want to raise children in a family that treats me like a maid? Once we have kids, everything will change. They'll be my father's grandchildren. They'll carry the Anderson name. The family will respect you more. They'll respect the children, not me. I'll still just be the woman who gave birth to them. The conversation ended unresolved. Michael left once again, promising to think of a solution. But Jessica already knew there was no possible solution within the Anderson family. The following week, something unexpected happened. Richard, the family patriarch, showed up at the small accounting office where Jessica worked. It was a modest commercial building in the city center, a far cry from the luxurious offices where the Anderson family conducted business. The 70-year-old man, with white hair and a neatly trimmed mustache, caused a stir among the employees when he walked into reception, asking for Jessica. She met him in a small conference room, curious about what he wanted. Jessica, I came here because I owe you an apology, Richard said, removing his jacket and settling into the plastic chair. What happened at my party was unacceptable. Mr. Richard, you don't have to... Yes, I do, he interrupted. Do you know my story, Jessica? I was born in rural Pennsylvania, the son of a railroad worker. My mother took in laundry to pay for my education. I know what it's like to be treated as inferior. Jessica watched him silently, seeing a side of her father-in-law she'd never known. When I was young, just like Michael, I was ashamed of my roots too. I lied about where I lived, made up stories about my family. I thought to be respected. I had to deny where I came from. What changed? Life, he said with a sad smile. When I started making money, I thought I'd finally be accepted by New York's wealthy families. I married Barbara because she came from an old money background. I raised my kids to value status and appearances. And in the process, I forgot who I really was. Richard paused to take a sip of the water Jessica had offered. When I met you 3 years ago, I saw in you the same determination I had at your age, the same strength to work hard and earn things honestly. But instead of protecting you from my family's prejudices, I let them treat you poorly, because deep down, I was afraid they'd find out I was just like you." Richard's words struck Jessica in a way she hadn't expected. In the older man, she didn't see the wealthy, powerful patriarch, just a country boy who had spent his life trying to prove he deserved respect. "Mr. Richard, I understand your position, but do you understand mine? I can't keep pretending I don't see the comments, that I don't hear the jokes. I can't raise children in an environment where they'll learn that some people are worth more than others." "You're right," he said, surprising Jessica. "And that's why I came here. I want to make you an offer." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. An offer. "I know you've always wanted to open your own bakery," Michael told me once. "I want to lend you the money to start your business. No interest, no interference from the family, just you doing what you love." Jessica fell silent, processing the offer. "Why would you do this?" "Because I recognize talent when I see it, and because maybe this is my chance to do the right thing. If my family doesn't know how to value you, at least I can give you the opportunity to show your worth to the world." "What about Michael and the rest of the family?" "Michael will have to choose, and the rest of the family, well, maybe it's time they learn that money isn't the only thing that matters in life." Jessica left the meeting with her head spinning. Richard's offer was tempting, but also complicated. Accepting the money would mean cutting ties with the Anderson family for good, or would it be her chance to prove she was so much more than they thought? That night, she talked at length with Amanda about the situation. "Jess, you've always dreamed of having your own bakery, and now this opportunity falls into your lap. I think it's the universe giving you a push. But it's my father-in-law's money. If I accept it and later divorce Michael, I'll owe a fortune to the family. And if you don't accept, you'll owe yourself a lifetime. How many people get a chance like this?" Jessica spent the night thinking. The next morning, she made her decision. She called Richard and arranged another meeting. This time she went to his house, facing for the first time the mansion where she'd endured so many difficult moments. Mrs. Barbara greeted her coldly, but Richard led her to his private office, a space lined with books and golf trophies. "I accept your offer," Jessica said plainly, "but on one condition." "What?" "I'll sign a formal contract, I'll pay market interest, and if I ever divorce Michael, I'll keep paying as usual. I don't want anyone saying I took advantage." Richard smiled, the first genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. "You've got real grit, girl. All right, we'll do it your way." In the following months, Jessica threw herself entirely into the bakery project. She found a storefront in Chinatown, a transitioning neighborhood blending tradition and modernity. The space was small but had soul, an old 1950s house converted into a shop. At first, Michael supported the project. He helped with bureaucracy, using family connections to speed up permits and licenses. For a few weeks, Jessica even believed things might work out between them. But it soon became clear his support came with expectations. He wanted the bakery to be a classy hobby for a wealthy wife, not a serious business demanding all of Jessica's dedication. "Jess, you don't need to work so many hours. Hire someone to handle operations and you just supervise," he'd say, not understanding that for Jessica the hands-on work was the most rewarding part. Tension grew when Jessica decided she wanted to live in the apartment above the bakery during the week, to start early and finish late. Michael thought the idea was absurd. "We have a beautiful home in Beverly Hills. Why would you want to live above a shop?" "Because it's my shop, Michael. It's my dream coming true." "But you're an Anderson now. There's a social position to maintain." It was during that conversation that Jessica realized Michael had perfectly learned his family's lessons. To him, she should be eternally grateful for having moved up in life through marriage, and any personal ambition was seen as ingratitude. The situation reached a critical point when Jennifer showed up at the bakery 2 days before the grand opening. "Jessica, we need to talk," she said, eyeing the space with clear disapproval. "The whole family is talking about this venture of yours." "And what are they saying?" "That you're embarrassing the Anderson name, a bakery in Chinatown. Seriously? Couldn't you have chosen something more appropriate?" Jessica was decorating a 3-tier cake when Jennifer arrived. She didn't stop working to entertain her sister-in-law. Appropriate how, Jennifer? I don't know, something more discreet. A cooking class for ladies, maybe. Or a small shop in a luxury mall selling fine sweets for a select clientele. And who decided I need to be discreet? Jessica, you're married to my brother. Everything you do reflects on our family. And frankly, a commercial bakery isn't the kind of business an Anderson should have. Jessica finally stopped decorating the cake and faced Jennifer. Jennifer, I'm not an Anderson. I'm a tailor who married an Anderson. And more importantly, I'm a woman making her dream come true through hard work and dedication. Don't be naive, Jessica. Do you think you got that money on merit? Daddy only lent it to you because he pities you. And when this little game of yours fails, guess who will have to foot the bill? If it fails, I'll pay. I signed a contract. With what money? You make $2,000 a month as an accountant. You wouldn't even be able to pay back what Daddy lent you in 10 years. The casual cruelty of Jennifer's words hit Jessica like a punch. It was true the loan was far beyond her current financial means, but that was exactly the motivation she needed to make the bakery succeed. Jennifer, thanks for stopping by, but if you have nothing constructive to say, I'd rather you leave. I have work to do. Don't say I didn't warn you when everything falls apart, Jennifer said on her way out. That night, Jessica called Michael and asked him to come to the bakery. They talked until late, and for the first time in months, Michael seemed to truly listen to her. Jess, I didn't know Jennifer came here to bother you. That was outrageous. Michael, the problem isn't just Jennifer, it's your whole family. And more importantly, it's you. What do you mean? You agree with them, maybe not openly, but deep down, you also think I'm overdoing it, that I should be content just being your wife and nothing else. Michael stayed silent for long minutes, looking around the bakery taking shape. The pale yellow walls, the display cases where the sweets would be showcased, the scent of cinnamon and vanilla already filling the air. I'm scared, he finally admitted. Scared of what? Scared that you're stronger than me. Scared that you won't need me anymore. Scared that when you realize what you're capable of, you'll see you can have something better. It was the first time Michael had been completely honest about his feelings. Jessica felt a mix of compassion and sadness. Michael, I never wanted to be better than you. I just wanted you by my side. I've always been by your side. No, you've always been on the fence. When your family attacked me, you stayed neutral. When I needed support, you were torn between me and them. That's not being by my side. The conversation ended without a definitive resolution, but with more clarity. Michael promised to think about what she had said, and Jessica promised to give their marriage one more chance, but only if he really changed. The grand opening of Jess's Sweets happened on a sunny Friday in November. Jessica had invited friends, co-workers, some clients who had already ordered sweets for private events, and of course the Anderson family. Richard arrived early, wearing a simple suit and bringing a bouquet of flowers for the family's new businesswoman, as he introduced her to everyone. Mrs. Barbara came out of obligation, but kept to herself, limiting herself to politely greeting Jessica. Michael showed up at lunchtime straight from the office and was visibly proud to see the bustle in the shop. There was a line of people waiting to try the sweets, and several were already placing orders for the weekend. Jennifer was the last to arrive, accompanied by her husband Kevin and their 2 young children. She observed everything with a critical eye, but Jessica noticed that even she was impressed by the quality of the products. Jessica, congratulations, Jennifer said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I hope everything works out. The first month of the bakery exceeded all of Jessica's expectations. She woke up at 5 in the morning to start making the day's fresh sweets, worked until 9 at night serving customers, and still found the energy to create new flavors and recipes. Michael initially tried to help in his free time, but soon realized he had no knack for the business. He was better at handling administrative tasks, taking care of accounting and legal matters. It was during this time that something unexpected happened. Ethan, Jennifer, and Kevin's 8-year-old son started stopping by the bakery after school. His school was nearby, and he discovered he could visit Aunt Jess's shop for a treat before heading home. Aunt Jess, why doesn't Mom like you? Ethan asked one day, with the brutal honesty of children. Jessica paused while frosting a strawberry cake to look at the blonde, blue-eyed boy who looked so much like Michael at that age. "Why do you think your mom doesn't like me, Ethan?" "Because when Dad said he wanted to bring me and Emma here for sweets, Mom got mad. She said you were getting too full of yourself and didn't want us coming here. And yet you still came. Dad brought me secretly. He said you make the best sweets in the city and that I was missing out if I didn't try them." Jessica smiled, imagining Kevin defying Jennifer to defend her bakery. In the following days, Ethan became a regular customer. He always arrived around 4 in the afternoon, ordered a gourmet chocolate truffle, and chatted with Jessica while she worked. The boy was clearly starved for attention, and Jessica found she enjoyed his company. It was Ethan who inadvertently revealed more of the Anderson family's secrets. "Aunt Jess, is it true Grandpa Richard is going to lose all his money?" Jessica nearly dropped the bowl of chocolate she was holding. "Where did you hear that, Ethan?" "Mom was talking to Dad the other day. She said Grandpa made bad investments and the company is in trouble, and that maybe she'd have to get a job." The news left Jessica unsettled. If it were true, it would explain a lot, including why Richard had reached out to her and offered the loan. That night, she talked to Michael about it. "Jess, how did you find out about this?" "Michael, is it true? Is your family in financial trouble?" Michael sighed, sinking into the small couch in the apartment above the bakery where Jessica now spent most of her time. "The company is going through some difficulties, yes. Dad made some risky investments last year that didn't work out, and with the economic crisis, several clients stopped paying. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to worry you, and because, well, maybe I was ashamed. My family always boasted about being rich and powerful, and now we might have to sell the mansion." Jessica processed the information. "Michael, this changes a lot." "How so?" "If your family is having financial trouble, all those comments about my background, about me not being good enough, they don't make sense anymore, do they?" Michael fell silent, seeing the logic in his wife's reasoning. "Actually, I might soon be in a better financial position than them," Jessica continued, without malice, just stating a fact. "Jess, you're not going to throw this in my face, are you?" "Michael, I don't want to throw anything in anyone's face, but I want you to understand one thing. I never needed your family's money to prove my worth, and now, more than ever, that's becoming clear." The conversation opened a new perspective on their relationship. Michael began to see Jessica not as the poor girl who had moved up in life by marrying him, but as a capable businesswoman building her own success. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. 2 weeks later, the bomb dropped. Richard had to declare bankruptcy for the company and announced to the family that they'd have to sell the mansion and drastically change their lifestyle. The family meeting was tense. Jessica was invited, since she was officially part of the family, and because the loan she had taken was involved in the financial mess. "Dad, how could this happen?" Jennifer asked, clearly panicked. "What now? Is Kevin going to have to support our family alone?" "Jennifer, calm down. We'll find a solution," Richard said, but his voice betrayed exhaustion and worry. "A solution? Dad, I have 2 small children, an expensive house to maintain, private school to pay for. I don't even know how to fry an egg." That's when all eyes turned to Jessica. She immediately realized what they were thinking. "Jessica," Mrs. Barbara said softly, her voice barely masking desperation, "could you consider speeding up the loan repayment or maybe turning it into a partnership? The money would help us so much right now." Jessica looked around the room where, months earlier, she had been humiliated and treated like a servant. Now, the same people who had scorned her were asking for her financial help. "Mrs. Barbara, I understand the family's difficult situation, but I have a signed contract, and I intend to honor it exactly as agreed, not sooner, not later." "But you're part of the family," Richard insisted. "Family helps each other." "Family helps each other," Jessica repeated slowly. "And where was this family when I needed support? When I was being humiliated and treated like a maid?" The silence that followed was heavy. Michael tried to intervene. "Jess, They admit they were wrong. It's different now. It's different because now they need me, Jessica said. When they had money, I was beneath them. Now that they're broke, suddenly I'm family. Jessica, Jennifer said, tears in her eyes. I know I was terrible to you, but I'm desperate. My kids, they don't deserve to pay for our mistakes. It was the first time Jessica had seen Jennifer vulnerable. The woman who had always treated her with contempt was now begging for help. Jennifer, I'm sorry about your children's situation, but their responsibility is yours and Kevin's, not mine. So you're going to leave us in misery? Mrs. Barbara asked indignantly. I'm going to honor my contract and take care of my own life. Exactly as you always told me to do. Jessica stood up to leave, but Michael held her by the arm. Jess, for our marriage, please. Michael, our marriage was always secondary to you. First came your family, then came me. Now that your family needs help, I'm still secondary. The difference is that now I'm the one who has to solve their problems. Jessica's exit from that meeting marked the definitive end of any possibility of reconciliation with the Anderson family. In the following days, Michael tried several times to talk to her, but always circling back to the same point. She should help the family out of love for him. Michael, you're asking me to fund your family's lifestyle, Jessica said during one of these conversations. The same family that never accepted me and only comes to me now because they need my money. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. And you know what's worse? You think it's normal for me to have this obligation, as if it's natural for me to work to support people who look down on me. Jess, they've changed. Jennifer even apologized. Jennifer apologized because she's desperate. If she had money, she'd still treat me like a servant. Michael couldn't deny it because deep down he knew it was true. The situation became even more complicated when Jessica discovered that Michael had given personal guarantees for some of his father's failed investments. That meant he was also in debt, and that the apartment they lived in could be seized by creditors. Michael, why didn't you tell me you were involved in your father's debts? Because I didn't want to worry you, and because I hoped we could solve it as a family. As a family, always as a family. Jessica shook her head, exhausted. Michael, you're 32 years old, and you've never made a decision that went against your family, not even to defend me. It was at that moment Jessica made the hardest decision of her life. She sought out a family law attorney to understand her legal options. The lawyer, Mr. Robert Wilson, a 50-year-old man experienced in complex cases, was direct. Jessica, you have two options. First, try to save the marriage and accept that you'll be responsible for your husband's family's debts. Second, separate now before the situation gets worse. What about my loan with my father-in-law? Your loan predates the current debts and has specific guarantees. You won't lose the bakery, but if you stay married to Michael, you could end up taking on other financial responsibilities. And if I separate? If you separate, you'll keep your business, honor your contract with your ex-father-in-law, and move on without the financial complications of his family. Jessica left the lawyer's office with a decision made, but still heavy-hearted. She truly loved Michael, but she realized she loved the idea of who he could be more than who he actually was. That night, she prepared a special dinner in the apartment above the bakery and invited Michael for a final conversation. Michael, I want a divorce, she said, getting straight to the point. Michael dropped his fork on the plate, clearly shocked. Jess, you can't be this drastic. We can work through this together. Michael, for the past 3 years, every time we had a problem, you chose your family. Every time I needed support, you stayed neutral. Now that your family has financial trouble, you want me to sacrifice my future to save them. It's not a sacrifice, it's an investment in our family. Our family, Jessica laughed humorlessly. Michael, your family never accepted me as part of it, and you never made an effort to change that. Now you want me to sacrifice myself for people who look down on me? But if you leave me now, during the worst phase of my life... Michael, the worst phase of my life was when your family humiliated me and you stayed silent. I got through it alone. You'll get through it too. The separation was bitter, but necessary. Michael tried until the last minute to make Jessica change her mind, even promising to move to another state far from his family. But Jessica knew he would never be happy away from the Andersons, and she would never be happy knowing she was the one who took him away from them. The following months were about complete rebuilding. Jessica focused entirely on her bakery, expanding the business and building a loyal clientele. Ethan kept coming by after school, now officially with Kevin's permission. He had separated from Jennifer and was trying to get closer to his kids. "Aunt Jess, why aren't you and Uncle Michael married anymore?" Ethan asked one day. "Because sometimes people who love each other can't live together, Ethan. It's no one's fault. It just happens. My mom said it was your fault, that you abandoned the family when they needed you most." Jessica sighed. Even after everything, Jennifer was still trying to paint her as the villain. "Ethan, your mom is going through a tough time and needs someone to blame. I understand, but what matters is that you know you'll always be welcome here no matter what the adults do." The boy smiled and bit into the gourmet brigadeiro she had made just for him. It was through Ethan that Jessica learned the Andersons had moved to a smaller apartment in Astoria, that Jennifer was taking a manicure course to start working, and that Mrs. Barbara had sold all her jewelry to pay off debts. "And Grandpa Richard?" Jessica asked. "Grandpa is working as a rideshare driver now. He says it's like going back to his roots, that he used to drive for money when he was young too." Jessica felt a pang of sympathy for Richard. Despite everything, he had been the only one in the family who tried to make peace with her. A few days later, Richard showed up at the bakery at closing time. "Jessica, can we talk?" He looked noticeably thinner, dressed in simple clothes, and driving a used Camry instead of the Lexus he'd always had. "Of course, Mr. Richard. Would you like some coffee?" They sat at one of the small tables in the bakery, now decorated with plants and paintings Jessica had bought at antique fairs. "And Jessica, I came here to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For honoring our contract even when my family begged you to help us, for standing firm when I didn't have the courage to." His honesty surprised her. "Mr. Richard, I just did what was right." "You did what I should have done long ago. You showed that a person doesn't have to deny their roots to have worth. That honest work and dignity are worth more than social status." Richard paused to take a sip of coffee. "You know, Jessica, losing everything was the best thing that's happened to me in years. Now I remember who I was before I tried to be who I thought I should be. I drive my car, talk to people from all walks of life, and sleep soundly because I know I earned every dollar I made that day." "And your family? How are they handling the changes?" "Barbara is learning to cook. Can you imagine? After 40 years of marriage, she's discovering she has a knack for homemade bread. Jennifer is struggling the most, but she's learning too. She was always too spoiled. And Michael. Michael is trying to find a job. It's not easy for him. He's always worked for the family business, but he'll learn. We're all learning." Before leaving, Richard said something that stayed etched in Jessica's memory. "Jessica, I lost a son when you separated from Michael, but I gained a daughter when you showed our whole family what it means to have character. If one day you can forgive the mistakes of a proud old man, know that you'll always be welcome in my life." The months passed, and Jess's sweets became a success in the area. Jessica hired 2 employees, one to help with production and another for customer service, and was planning to open a second store. It was on a December afternoon, almost a year after the separation, that Michael showed up at the bakery. He looked different, thinner, dressed simply, riding a motorcycle instead of driving a car. But what caught Jessica's attention the most was his expression, more mature, more aware. "Hi Jess, can we talk?" Jessica finished helping the customer in the store and sat with Michael at a corner table. "How are you?" she asked. "Different, working as a sales rep for a cleaning products company. It's not what I dreamed of, but it's honest and gives me enough to live on." "And how are things at home?" "Everyone's learning to manage. Mom has become an excellent cook, believe it or not. And Jennifer is still adjusting, but she's working and taking care of the kids on her own since she split from Kevin." Michael was silent for a few minutes, watching the bakery's activity. "Jess, I came here to apologize. For real this time." "Michael? No. Let me speak. I came here many times over the past few months, but always lost my nerve, because I knew that once I said what I came to say, It would be the final end of any hope of us getting back together. Jessica listened quietly. Jess, you were right. About everything. I never stood up for you because deep down, I agreed with my family. I thought you were lucky to marry me and that you should be grateful for moving up in life. I never saw you as my equal. The words were painful, but Jessica felt relief at finally hearing the truth. When you left me, and when my family lost everything, I finally understood who you really are. You're the strongest, most principled person I know, and I didn't deserve you. Michael. I didn't come here to ask for us to get back together, Jess. I came to ask for forgiveness, and to say I'm proud of you, of this bakery, of your success, of the woman you've become. Michael stood to leave, but Jessica took his hand. Michael, thank you. For coming here, for being honest. That means a lot to me. You'll be happy, Jess. You deserve someone who values you from day one. And you'll be happy too, Michael. You're becoming a better person. They said goodbye with a hug, and Jessica knew this was truly their final farewell. But it was a peaceful goodbye, without bitterness or resentment. 6 months later, the bakery was expanding rapidly. Jessica had opened a second location in Williamsburg and was negotiating contracts to supply sweets for corporate events. It was at one of these business meetings that she met Ryan Miller, an event planner who had been impressed by the quality of her products. Ryan was 38, divorced, and the father of a 10-year-old girl. Unlike Michael, he came from a modest background in Newark. He had built his event business from scratch, starting as a waiter at parties to learn the trade. Jessica, your sweets are exceptional, but what impresses me most is your dedication. It's rare to find someone who loves what they do so much. Their relationship developed naturally. Ryan respected Jessica's work, understood her ambitions, and never tried to diminish her dreams. He supported her in tough decisions and genuinely celebrated every victory of hers. Jess, have you ever thought about writing a cookbook? Your creations are unique. It would be a hit, he said one afternoon while visiting the bakery. You think so? I never considered it. I think you underestimate your talent. You're not just an exceptional baker, you're a born entrepreneur. With Ryan's encouragement, Jessica began documenting her recipes and her story. The book, Jess's Sweets, Recipes and Reflections of an Entrepreneur, was published a year later and became a bestseller in the culinary category. The book's success opened new opportunities. Jessica started giving talks on women's entrepreneurship, appearing on cooking shows, and consulting for others looking to start food businesses. During one of these talks at a women's entrepreneurship conference, Jessica spotted a familiar face in the audience. It was Jennifer, who had shown up with a friend. After the talk, Jennifer approached the stage. Jessica, can we talk? They met at the hotel cafe where the conference was held. Jennifer looked very different, simpler, humbler, clearly marked by the hardships of recent years. Jessica, I came here because I needed to see you achieving all this. What do you mean? When you left Michael and refused to help us financially, I hated you. I thought you were selfish, ungrateful. But now, seeing how far you've come, I realize you were right. Jennifer nervously stirred her coffee. Having to work, having to fend for myself was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most important. I discovered I'm capable of much more than I imagined. How are your kids? They're fine, different, more aware of the value of things. Ethan still talks about you. He says he wants to start his own business when he grows up, just like Aunt Jess. And you, how are you? I have my own salon now, small in my neighborhood, but it's mine. And you know what's funny? I'm happier now, earning little but with dignity than I was before, when I had everything but looked down on those who didn't. Jennifer paused. Jessica, I want to apologize for everything, for treating you poorly, for being prejudiced, for trying to belittle you. You were always better than all of us, and we were too proud to admit it. Jennifer, it's okay. The past is past. No, it's not okay. I wasted years of my life being someone I don't like. And I almost ruined my brother's life because I taught him the same prejudices I learned. The two talked for over an hour. Jennifer shared her struggles, her discoveries, her changes, and Jessica realized her sister-in-law had truly transformed. "Jennifer, if you'd like, I can help you expand your salon. Not financially, but with management tips, contacts, things like that." "You do that? After everything?" "Of course. Women entrepreneurs need to support each other." 2 years later, at Richard's 73rd birthday, something unexpected happened. The celebration was held at Jennifer's salon, now converted into a small event space. The family was gathered: Richard, Mrs. Barbara, Jennifer with her kids, Kevin, who had reconciled with his ex-wife, Michael with a new girlfriend, and to everyone's surprise, Jessica and Ryan. "Jessica," Richard said, raising a glass of grape juice, "I'd like to make a toast to the woman who taught this family the true meaning of dignity." "Grandpa, is Aunt Jess cutting the cake?" asked Ethan, now 11. "No, Ethan," Jessica said, smiling. "Today, your mum is cutting the cake. She made it. She deserves the honor." The cake, simple but tasty, was made by Jennifer with a recipe Jessica had taught her. It was a symbolic gesture. The family had learned to value manual work, simplicity, honesty. During the party, Mrs. Barbara approached Jessica. "Dear, I know I'll never be able to make up for the years I treated you poorly, but I want you to know that today, I'm proud to have been your mother-in-law." "Mrs. Barbara, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. You saved this family, Jessica, not with money, but by showing that a person's worth isn't in their bank account." By the end of the night, when everyone had left, Jessica and Ryan walked through the streets of the neighborhood where Jennifer now lived. It was a simple place, with small houses and tree-lined streets. "Jess, do you regret anything?" Ryan asked. "Nothing. If I hadn't gone through all of that, I'd never have discovered what I'm capable of. I'd never have built my own life." "What if Michael had stood up for you from the start? What if his family had accepted you?" Jessica thought for a moment. "Maybe I'd have been happy in a different way, but I wouldn't have been myself. I'd always have been Michael's wife, not Jessica." They continued walking in silence, hand in hand, each lost in their own thoughts. 3 years later, Jessica stood on stage at the Javits Center, receiving the Entrepreneur of the Year award from the New York Chamber of Commerce. Jess's Sweets now had 5 stores, an online sales platform serving the entire country, and a training program for women who wanted to start businesses in the food industry. In the audience were Ryan and his daughter Sarah, whom Jessica had learned to love as her own. Also, there were Amanda, the loyal friend who had always believed in her, Ethan and his parents, Jennifer and Kevin, and in the front row, Mr. Richard, now 76, standing and applauding with tears in his eyes. Michael was there too, accompanied by his wife and young son. He had remarried a teacher, built a simple but happy life, and become a devoted father. Periodically, he and Jessica would meet for coffee and talk about life, always as friends. "When I was young," Jessica said into the microphone, "I thought success meant being accepted by people I considered superior to me. Today, I know success is realizing you don't need anyone's approval to have worth." The audience applauded, but Jessica continued, "I'm not here to inspire you with a pretty story of triumph. I'm here to say we all have the right to dream big, work hard, and refuse to be treated as less than we deserve." After the ceremony, there was a party in the hotel ballroom. Jessica mingled with guests, talking to business owners, journalists, and other entrepreneurs. That's when she spotted in a corner of the room a young woman around 25 who seemed out of place. The girl wore simple clothes, was clearly nervous, and stared wide-eyed at everything. Jessica approached her. "Hi, I'm Jessica. Are you okay?" I'm Ashley. I work at a bakery in the South Bronx. I won the entry in a raffle from the neighborhood association. What did you think of the talk?" "Ma'am, I cried because, well, I've always dreamed of having my own bakery. But everyone says it's crazy, that I don't have an education, that I don't have money." Jessica smiled, seeing a bit of herself in the young woman. "Ashley, how old are you?" 25. "I was 28 when I opened my first bakery. I didn't have money either, and I didn't have a college degree. But I had something no one could take away from me." "What?" "The certainty that I deserved to try." Jessica spent the next 30 minutes talking with Ashley, giving practical advice on how to start a business, recommending free courses, explaining microcredit. Ashley, if you'd like, you can reach out to me. I have a mentorship program for women entrepreneurs. Really? You'd do that for me? Of course. No one succeeds alone. When the party ended, Ryan and Jessica drove back home through the streets of New York. The city looked beautiful that night, its lights reflecting an energy of endless possibilities. Jess, have you ever thought about what your life would be like if you'd never left that birthday party at your ex-father-in-law's? Jessica looked out the window at the city where she had built her new life. I'd probably still be there, pretending not to hear the comments, pretending everything was fine. It would have been an easier life, but it wouldn't have been my life. Do you miss anything from that time? Maybe the naivety, believing that if I were good enough, people would accept me. But I don't miss the person I was. Insecure, always trying to please, always shrinking herself to fit into the space others defined for her. Ryan stopped the car in front of their building. It was a modern high-rise in Soho overlooking the city. Not a mansion, but something earned through hard work. Jess, can I ask you something? Of course. Would you take me on as a partner if I wanted to invest in expanding the bakery to other states? Jessica laughed. Ryan, do you want to be my business partner, or do you want me to be your wife? Both, but mostly the second. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Jessica Taylor, will you marry me? Not to move up in life, not to have an important last name, but to build a life together based on respect, partnership, and real love. Jessica looked at the simple but beautiful ring, then at the man who had learned to love her exactly as she was. Ryan, I will. But on one condition. What? I'll keep being Jessica Taylor. I don't want to change my last name. I want our daughters to learn that a woman doesn't need a man's name to have an identity. Our daughters? Well, Sarah is already our daughter, and I hope we'll have a few more kids to raise with the right values. They kissed right there in the car, with New York City as the witness to another new beginning. A year later, Jessica and Ryan's wedding was held at Jennifer's event space, now expanded and well known in the area. The celebration was simple but full of meaning. Everyone who truly mattered in Jessica's life was there. The wedding cake, of course, was made by the bride herself, a special 5-tier creation, representing the 5 years since she'd walked out of that party where she was called just a cook. During her speech, Jessica looked around at all the guests and said, 5 years ago, at a party much like this one, someone called me just a cook as if it were an insult. Today, I say with pride, yes, I am a cook. I'm a cook, an entrepreneur, a writer, a speaker, a mentor, and above all, a woman who learned we don't need anyone's approval to be who we truly are. Ethan, now 13 and the official ring bearer, shouted from the back, and the best cook in the world. Everyone laughed and applauded. Jessica looked around at the people she'd met on this journey. Richard, now working as an accountant at a small firm, but happy and at peace with himself. Mrs. Barbara, who had become an excellent cook and now helped Jennifer at the event space. Michael, happily remarried, finally free from the pressure of being the family heir. And most of all, she saw all the women she had met over the years, each building their own story of overcoming and growth. Ashley, the young woman she had met at the awards ceremony, was there in the uniform of her newly opened bakery. Amanda, always her best friend, now Jessica's partner in a consulting firm for small businesses. The employees from the bakeries, who had become true partners and friends. When the party ended and everyone left, Jessica and Ryan stayed alone in the hall, helping Jennifer clean up. Jess, Jennifer said, taking off her apron and sitting in a chair. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you forgive me? Really? Jessica stopped stacking plates and looked at her former sister-in-law. Jennifer, there's nothing to forgive. You were a different person back then. So was I. We've both grown. But I was so cruel to you. You were cruel because that's how you were taught to be. Just like I accepted being treated poorly because that's how I was taught to accept it. But people can change, and we did. Jennifer hugged Jessica, and it was a genuine embrace from two women who had learned to respect each other. Jessica, thank you for teaching me I could be better. Thank you for teaching me. I deserved respect." 3 months after the wedding, Jessica discovered she was pregnant. The news brought immense joy, but also deep reflection about the kind of mother she wanted to be. "Ryan, I want our daughter to grow up knowing she can be anything she wants, that she doesn't need anyone's approval to dream big." What if it's a boy? If it's a boy, I want him to learn to respect and value women, to understand that a person's worth isn't in their bank account or last name. The pregnancy went smoothly, and Jessica kept working almost until the end. She used this time to write her second book, Purposeful Entrepreneurship, which became even more successful than the first. Emma Jessica Taylor Miller was born on a sunny September morning, weighing 7 pounds and with the most expressive eyes Ryan and Jessica had ever seen. "She's going to be a fighter just like her mum," Ryan said, holding their daughter in his arms. "She's going to be herself," Jessica corrected, "and we'll support whoever she decides to be." 6 months later, Jessica was back at work, now with an even clearer perspective on her goals. She wanted to build an empire, not just for herself, but to leave a legacy for her daughter. Jess's Sweets now had 15 locations in New York and was expanding to Los Angeles and Chicago. But more important than financial growth was the social impact it was creating. Jessica had started a professional training program that had already graduated over 200 women in vulnerable situations. Many of them now had their own businesses or worked in leadership roles in the bakery chain. It was during the opening of the first store in Los Angeles that Jessica received an unexpected call. "Hello, Jessica. This is the production team from Today. We'd like to invite you to share your story on the show." Her appearance on the national program was a milestone in Jessica's career. She told her story with simplicity and honesty, from the humiliation at the birthday party to her current success. "Katie," she said to the host, "what I want people to understand is that there's no magic. There's hard work, persistence, and most of all, believing you deserve respect. Do you have any advice for women going through similar situations? Yes, don't accept being treated as less than you are. And if someone doesn't know how to appreciate you, that's important information about them, not about you." The show was a rating success and generated hundreds of messages from women sharing their own stories of overcoming challenges. One of those messages came from someone Jessica didn't expect, Katie Couric herself. "Jessica, your story really moved me. I'd like to make a documentary about women entrepreneurs, and I'd love for you to be one of the featured women." The documentary, Women Who Dared, was released 2 years later and became a national phenomenon. Jessica shared the screen with 6 other entrepreneurs from different fields and regions across the country. During the film's premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival, Jessica stood on stage with the other women when she spotted a familiar face in the audience. It was Michael, accompanied by his wife. He had made a point of attending the festival to support his ex-wife. After the screening, they met in the theater lobby. "Jess, congratulations. The documentary is beautiful, and your part is the most touching." "Thank you, Michael. How have you been?" "Good. Really good, actually. I got a job in public service working in the education department. The pay isn't much, but I'm making a difference in the lives of underprivileged kids, and that makes me happier than money ever did." Michael's wife, Emily, approached them. "Jessica, I've wanted to meet you. Michael always speaks of you with such warmth and respect." "I imagine this must be strange for you, Emily." "Actually, no. I admire strong women, and from what Michael tells me, you were essential in shaping the man he is today." Jessica looked at Michael and saw a peace in him she'd never seen before. "Michael, you seem truly happy." "I am. I've learned that happiness has nothing to do with social status or money. It's about being at peace with who you are." "And your family? How are they?" "My father now works as a financial consultant for small businesses. He uses his experience of losing everything to teach other entrepreneurs not to make the same mistakes. My mother has become a respected chef in their area. And Jennifer, well, you know how she's doing. She's doing great. Her event space is always packed." "And do you two talk?" "Sometimes. Mostly when she needs advice about expanding the business. She's become quite the entrepreneur." Michael smiled. Funny how life works, huh? My family had to lose everything to find their true worth. And you had to be humiliated to discover your strength. It wasn't humiliation, Michael. It was liberation. When she returned to New York, Jessica felt energized and full of new plans. The documentary had opened doors to international speaking engagements, invitations to join advisory boards for major companies, and investment opportunities in women-led startups. But the project that excited her most was creating Jess's Sweets Foundation, focused on vocational training and women's entrepreneurship in underserved communities. Ryan, I want our daughter to grow up seeing that success only matters when it's shared. And she will, through both of us. Ryan had officially become a partner in the bakery chain and was leading its expansion to other states. But he always made it clear he was Jessica's partner, not the owner. People sometimes ask if it bothers me to be Jessica Taylor's husband, he told her one night as they bathed little Emma Jessica. And does it? It makes me proud. I married an extraordinary woman. Why would that bother me? Emma Jessica, now 2 years old, was babbling words and already showing signs of a strong personality. She loved helping her mother in the kitchen, even if helping meant making a huge mess. "Mommy, cake!" she said, pointing to the oven where Jessica was baking a cake to test a new recipe. "That's right, my princess. Mommy makes sweets, and when you grow up, you can be anything you want. Cake, sweets too, or a doctor, or an engineer, or an astronaut. Anything." Jessica often thought about the kind of world she was leaving for her daughter, a world where there was still so much prejudice and inequality, but also a world where more and more women were fighting to pave their own paths. It was with this in mind that she decided to write her third book, Letters to My Daughter, Lessons on Courage, Dignity, and Dreams. The book was a collection of reflections on the values she wanted to pass on to Emma Jessica. Each chapter was written as a letter to her daughter at different ages, at 10, at 16, at 21, at 30. "My dear daughter," she wrote in one of the letters, "one day someone will try to belittle you. They'll say you're not good enough, or smart enough, or pretty enough. When that happens, remember, that person is speaking about their own fears and insecurities, not about you." The book launch coincided with the 10th anniversary of the bakery. To celebrate, Jessica organized a party that went far beyond a simple gathering. She invited all the women who had gone through the company's training program, all the employees, all the business partners, and everyone who had been important in her journey. The party was held in the same hall where she had been humiliated 10 years earlier, Jennifer's event space, now expanded and modernized. "It's symbolic," Jessica told Ryan. "I'm celebrating my success in the same place where I found my strength." Mr. Richard, now 80 but still sharp and active, was one of the guests of honor. "Jessica," he said during his speech, 10 years ago, you left this place carrying a cake and a dose of humiliation. Today, you return as the owner of your own empire, but more importantly, as a woman who has shown so many others that they too can dream big." The party was an absolute success. There were over 300 guests, including businesswomen, journalists, politicians, and women of all ages and backgrounds. Throughout the evening, Jessica moved among the guests, chatting, listening to stories, and meeting new people. It was then that she noticed a young woman in the corner of the room who seemed out of place. The girl must have been about 20, dressed simply, looking around with a mix of awe and intimidation. Jessica approached her. "Hi, I'm Jessica. Are you okay?" I'm Sarah. I work at one of your stores in Williamsburg. The manager gave me the invitation, but I don't know if I should be here." "Why not?" "Because just look at this place. All these important people. I'm just an employee." Jessica smiled, remembering herself 10 years ago. "Sarah, can I tell you a secret? 10 years ago, I also thought I didn't belong in places like this. I thought there were important people and then people like me. What changed? I realized there's no such thing as important people and unimportant people. There are people who believe in their own worth and people who haven't discovered it yet." Jessica spent the next few minutes talking with Sarah, learning that the young woman dreamed of studying business but couldn't afford college. "Sarah, do you know about the Foundation's scholarship program?" "No." "Then let's talk about it on Monday. Maybe we can help you make that dream come true." At the end of the party, when everyone had left, Jessica stayed alone in the hall for a few minutes. She looked around, remembering that night 10 years ago when she had walked out of there humiliated and heartbroken. Now, she was back as a fulfilled woman, a loving mother, a happy wife, a successful entrepreneur, and above all, someone who had learned to value herself. Ryan approached her, carrying Emma Jessica, who had fallen asleep during the party. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking that if someone had told me 10 years ago I'd be here today, I wouldn't have believed it. And if you could go back in time and change something?" Jessica looked at her daughter sleeping in her father's arms, thought of all the women she had helped over the years, all the dreams she had achieved. "I wouldn't change a thing. Every humiliation, every tear, every hard moment brought me here, and here is exactly where I want to be." They left the hall hand in hand, with their daughter in their arms, ready to face whatever came next. Because Jessica had learned the most important lesson of all, that a person's worth doesn't depend on others' approval, but on the courage to stay true to oneself. And as they drove through the streets of New York, Jessica looked out at the city where she had built her new life and smiled. Not because everything had worked out, because it hadn't always, but because she knew that no matter what happened, she had the strength and dignity to face any challenge. After all, she was no longer the girl who accepted being treated like a servant. She was Jessica Taylor, entrepreneur, mother, wife, mentor, writer, and above all, a woman who had learned she deserved respect. And that was a lesson she would never forget. The end of the story. Now tell me, dear listener, what did you think of Jessica's story? Have you ever been in a similar situation where you had to choose between your dignity and others' approval? Leave a comment sharing your experience. We love reading your stories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this narrative, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.